Welcome to Andy's Garage. I'm Andy Phillips. Today we have a car that won't start, and I'm going to show you an easy way to fix it. Now, keep in mind, this is not for every situation where a car won't start. It can be a lot of things, starters, electrical issues, a lot of things can cause that problem. But for this particular vehicle, I'm going to show you what we were encountering and what I did to fix it. It's very quick and easy. And most of the time, if you have a no start, I would start with what I'm going to do in this video before you go putting any money into it. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and show you what's happening. So we put the key in. You can hear that, not starting. We're going to take a look under here, but we're going to start right here with the battery. A lot of times, if it's the starter, you're not even going to have it turning over like we saw. It's going to make a clicking noise, things like that. So I'm going to start with the battery because a lot of times it could just be the battery. So we can start by checking the voltage on it. You also want to make sure that the leads are clean. So the first thing I'm seeing here as I come in here, look at this junk right here caked up. Not good. Let's go ahead and check the positive terminal and see how that looks. Look at that one too. If those terminals are dirty, you're not going to get the proper connection, which is going to result in a similar situation that we just had. So I'm going to go ahead and clean those terminals off, and I think that's going to solve the problem. If not, then we'll check the voltage on the battery and probably have to replace it at that point. But let's clean all that corrosion off first, make sure that we have a good connection. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you'll have some people that'll say that if the car is cranking or turning over, then that can't be a battery issue. Usually when there is a battery issue, you'll hear clicking, or sometimes you'll even have the gauge kind of quirk out, bounce around a little bit as it's clicking, and it won't start at all, which is true. And a lot of times that is a clear indication that you have a bad battery. Now, in some cases, and I've been working on vehicles for over 20 years now, and I've had this happen several times, not very common, but it does happen, where the car will turn over, it will crank, and it won't start, and it is the battery. Sometimes it could be the charge just slightly under 12 volts, or sometimes it could be, as we're going to see here, with the actual connections being corroded. So I always go right to the battery whenever there's a starting issue, especially if you have the battery light on your dash either on or flashing off and on, as we saw as well. That's also telling you that there's an issue with it. So I want to get close here to a starter so you can kind of understand how a car can still be cranking or turning over and still the car not starting. So let's take a look at this starter so I can explain how these pieces work together to start the car. This is a starter here. You have this gear inside of it. When the starter is engaged, that gear will then move out and it'll then meet the flywheel. It'll rotate the flywheel, which will then turn the crankshaft. That's what starts the car. So, however, normally the crankshaft needs approximately 100 RPMs in order to get the car to start. So you could have an issue with the battery, either a voltage issue or a connection issue, where if it's not turning it to the speed needed, you will have what's known as a slow crank, or sometimes even just a crank that I've experienced over the years. Not very common, but it will turn everything, which you would think the car would start, but it's not turning it to the full RPMs needed to actually get the engine started. And I believe that's what we're running into right here. I'm going to start by removing the connections here on the battery post so we can see what's exactly going on underneath. I'm sure the corrosion is spreading to the cables as well. So we'll go ahead and remove the negative one first, then we'll come here and take the positive cable off, and then let's see here. Look at that. Look at all that corrosion that just came off of there. Really bad. Got to get rid of that. Next, I'm going to bring this wire brush here. We're going to scrape all this off real good. You want to make sure you get as much as you can off all the corrosion, any traces of it. If not, that stuff will come back. So we're going to clean it real good. Next, we're going to grab this battery cleaner acid detector by Remove. This is really good stuff. And if you follow the directions on the back, it's very simple. You're just going to spray it on, let it sit for about 2 to 4 minutes, and then we're going to rinse it off with some water. And this is good stuff because this will actually, when it hits it, if there's any corrosion that we missed, as we're going to see in a minute, it's going to turn like a reddish color. So let's get this here. Go ahead and shake it up. We'll spray it on these posts real good. We got a lot of the corrosion off of there, so you're not seeing too much red showing up there, but we are going to also spray it here on the connectors here on the cable. Spray that real good. You want to make sure you really saturate it, because that will not only highlight it as it's doing right there with that reddish pinkish color, but it will also go ahead and clean that junk off there. You can see some of the posts there turning red as well. So now we're going to let it sit for the 2 to 4 minutes, and I'm going to speed this up here so we're not waiting the whole time. But 2 to 4 minutes, we're going to go ahead, let this thing do its job. And then once we're coming up on the end of that, next what we're going to do is we're going to get some water, and then we're just going to flush this stuff off of here. So we'll go ahead and rinse that off with the water. And what you can do is afterwards, what I'll do is I'll just take a towel and dry that off. The water will not hurt the battery, even though some people think it will, but it can lead to corrosion if you don't dry it off. I wanted to take a few minutes here to just talk about the process of flushing this cleaner with water. I know a lot of people are concerned about getting the battery posts and terminals wet like this. They think it can cause a major short and fire and things like that. For the most part, water itself is not that conductive. I mean, there may be some flow of current between the two when it's wet, but it's not to the degree where it's going to cause any risk or any kind of damage. It's not like if you're bridging it with a wrench or piece of conductive metal or copper wire, then you can have some problems. But batteries in them themselves are actually made to be out in the elements. If you're off-roading or if you're working on your car or trying to jumpstart it in the rain, things get wet and you don't have any problems. So as long as you follow the directions properly, everything should be fine. Everything is nice and clean. You can see the terminals now. We scraped them off with the wire brush, put that battery acid dissolver on it, nice and clean, but you still want to check your leads, and I'll show you why. This one looks good. Flip it over. Let's see if I can get the camera in here. Still has junk on the bottom, so we still need to clean that off because that's going to cause issues if we put it back on. Let's take a look at this one. This one also has stuff on the bottom. Need to clean all that off. Everything that's turning red was from that spray, but you can also see all the green corrosion. So I'm going to clean all that off, and then we'll be back to take a look at it and reconnect everything. As it's working, you can see still the red coming through, which is more corrosion that it's removing. It turns red. And on the other one, you can see a little bit of red still in there that it's working on as well. Let it do its job. Let it sit for 2 to 4 minutes, and then we'll rinse it off with water. Everything has been rinsed off. You can see all the corrosion is gone, nice and clean. On these leads too, we've let them dry. They're nice and clean. And if we come here on this one, all clean. Ready to be reconnected. Let's connect it all up, and I'm pretty sure the car is going to start with no problem. Start by putting the positive on first. Make sure it's all the way down. And you also want to make sure it's nice and tight. Another thing that can cause problems with a no start is if your battery connections here on the terminals get loose. So you always want to make sure that they're nice and solid. You don't want to over tighten them because these sometimes can be flimsy and they can break. Go ahead and lock it down. Good. Now we'll put this one on, our negative. Same thing with this. Push it all the way down nice and firm. Make sure that you have it on nice and tight. Connections are good. Let's try the car. Started right up. That wraps up this video on just basically fixing a non-starting car. Just a quick fix. A lot of times it's what I recommend. Instead of buying starters, replacing all these parts, check your battery. If the leads are not corroded, then check the voltage on it. If the battery is low in voltage and you have a battery charger, go ahead and recharge it. And your charger should let you know if it'll hold the charge. If you want to see a video I did on a product review of a nice little compact charger, I'll have that link across the top, also down in the description. Now, in some cases, unfortunately, if your battery is looking good, you get the car to start, but you're having a hard start on a regular basis, you may want to look at your starter because it could be giving you signs that it's starting to go but hasn't gone yet. You want to get rid of it before you wind up in a bad situation. So I hope that this video helped you out, was informative, just a quick video I wanted to show. Please send me any questions, comments. I would love to hear from you. As always, I appreciate all the support. Please like the video, subscribe to this channel. I'll see you next time.